Hello, John here, up on top of Mount Royal. In last class, a student asked me, we were talking about the dating scene and really bad dates, and a student asked me in class, what is the worst, most embarrassing date that you've ever had in your life? Um, so, first I didn't want to respond, but then, yeah. All right. So here's my worst date ever. Okay, so I was in my late teens. I went to a party, and it was with a friend of mine who was going to McGill at the time. Anyway, and so I met this girl. Let's call her Sheila, and we just hit it off like right away. She was really hot. She seemed to be into me. We started talking, and it was one of those things where we just ignored everybody else at the party. We're just like completely, linked. This like powerful connection, and we talked all night, just like hanging out, like the two of us. And then anyway, finally the party let out. Everybody was like, okay, you two, get a room. You can't stay here, kind of thing. So we ended up like walking to the top of Mount Royal, where I am now, to the lookout point. Super romantic spot. We went to the lookout point and we watched the sunrise over Mount. Yeah, it was absolutely perfect. Super romantic. It was amazing. We made out and stuff like that. Anyway, she was only in town for like the weekend. She was living in Sherbrooke. She was going to school down there. And so she had to catch her ride back to Sherbrooke or something like that. I can't remember exactly. It's been a long time. Anyway, so she had to go back to Sherbrooke like that morning or something. So I said, well, I have to work. I have to work this week. I have to do this stuff. But as soon as the end of the week, a week from then, I'm going to take a bus down to Sherbrooke. For those of you who don't know geography of Quebec, it's about, I don't know, like about maybe 2 hours south of Montreal, depending upon the traffic and the method, your transportation. So anyway, so I said I'm gonna take a bus down to Sherbrooke, and we're gonna hook up. It's gonna be amazing. So she said, fantastic. And then we decided to not even actually talk to each other on the phone. This is, of course, long before email was a thing. This is back in the day. So we decided not to talk to each other on the phone or anything, because it would just be much more special and romantic if I just like took the bus down there and called her from the bus station in Sherbrooke, right? So so we kissed. I walked her to where she had to go to get her lift or something like that. Anyway, so it was totally amazing. All week long, I'm walking on clouds. I think like this is absolutely amazing. This is just this wonderful person, all this stuff. So then, a week later, as promised, I take a bus down from Montreal to Sherbrooke, and I get out in the bus station, and I go to the payphone. Right, this is before cell phones. Nobody had cell phones back then, and I call her up, and I knew she had mentioned that she lived with like a bunch of roommates, like a lot of roommates. So it wasn't surprising. One of her roommates answered the phone and said, "It's John, and from Montreal. He's at the bus station." And I could hear in the background. I mean, the roommate had like her hand over the receiver, like people used to do, like so you couldn't hear what they were saying. But I could hear, even through her like hand, I could hear this muffled, "Oh fuck!" Right? And that was. We'll call her Sheila, right? That's not a real name, obviously. But that was Sheila, the woman I had met, saying like, "Oh fuck," right? So then there's like this awkward, wait and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. This is not the response I expected. So then Sheila gets on the phone, and she says, "Hi, wow, okay, so you're here down in Sherbrooke." And I was like, "Yeah, that was our deal, right? I was coming to Sherbrooke." And she's like, okay, okay." So she comes to the bus station. She gets me. No, I'm getting no love. She does not like hug me and say hello. She doesn't kiss me. There's no like, it's so great to see you. No, I mean, I might as well have been like her, like annoying cousin that she had to like entertain for the weekend or something. And she's like, oh, I gotta do it, obligation, right? So anyway, so she takes me back to her place, right? And her place was, I remember that it looked like a doctor's office. You know, like when there's like a shared medical practice, and they've got like the dermatologist has one door, and there's like whatever. They've all got like their different like doors and stuff like that, right? So I go in there. She had like 5 roommates. It was unbelievable, like big. And so there was like a common huge living room, and then there were these rooms like spoking off the perimeter of the room. There was off of this main room. So there's like a bunch of bedrooms, and then there was like a kitchen, and then a bathroom, and then this huge like general area that everybody would hang out in with like lots of couches and chairs and stuff like that. So I sit there, and she just looks really, really like awkward and confused and doesn't know what to do. And I'm just like, okay, I could take a hint. She's whatever. She's not into the John, right? She's not into me. Or maybe it was just like she was last, previous weekend, and she changed her mind. That's fine, right? People can change their mind. I'm cool with that. So I said, can I use the phone? Right. So I called the bus station. I said, when is the next bus going back to Montreal? And that's when I find out, I'm like, fuck, there's no bus going back to Montreal until the next morning, right? Which means I'm stuck in Sherbrooke for the night, which fucking sucks, right? So I'm thinking, okay, man, this is, she's clearly not into me. She brought me back here out of obligation, but she's totally ignoring me. And so I said, okay, well, I'm stuck here for the night. I'm gonna make the best of it, right? So I start like talking. Her roommates, I could tell, like they really felt bad for me. Like they were feeling some serious kind of sympathy. Like, fuck, this guy like came all the way down from Montreal and it's like not working at all. Like they could pick up, they took pity on me. So I befriended them and started like hanging out with them. I was having a really good time. And they said, there is this amazing pub close by. They have live music, they have cheap beer, they have good food. It's an incredible vibe. It's a really great place. Like, do you want to go? And I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. Like, so I went with her roommates out to this pub in Sherbrooke, and they were completely right. This was like one of the best pubs I've ever been to in my life. It was so much fun. They had fantastic live music, and this was at a time when a lot of Montreal bars were moving towards DJs or just having like playing like a radio station or something like that. There was much less live music in Montreal, so this was amazing. Like I hadn't heard, as much live music in Montreal in recent times. But anyway, so amazing live band, really great beer, cheap, great food, really fun place. Like everybody's like having a fantastic time. The dance floor is slamming, everybody's dancing. I'm having such a good time. I'm like, 3-4 beers in. I've totally gotten over my like humiliation and disappointment. I'm having a good time with my new best friends, right? Her roommates, right? And then the place just starts filling up, right? Filling up. And it seems like the entire town of Sherbrooke has shown up to go to this particular pub. Like, place is packed, place is slamming, right? And then Sheila shows up, right? Well, Sheila, right? Sheila shows up, and she is totally ignoring me. I don't even know if she noticed I was there. She probably did because I was hanging out with her roommates. But anyway, so she's there. She's totally ignoring me. And then I turn around at one point and I see her dancing with this like Greek god of a man. This like super good looking guy. She's dancing with him on the dance floor. And then I like look over at another point in the night, I don't know, maybe like an hour later, and they're like making out like crazy up against like the wall and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, so that's why she wasn't happy to see me. She's like, I thought, okay, she's probably got a boyfriend, and so last weekend was her getting like a little play on the side or something. She's cheating on him with me, and maybe she just, I don't know, was just talking shit when she told me to come down to Sherbrooke, and she figured I wouldn't actually do it. And I thought, okay, I figured it was something like that. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine, good riddance. So then at the at the end of the night, the bar closes, and I say to the roommates, I'm like, look, I don't have any place to stay at Sherbrooke. I have to. My bus leaves in the morning. Can I stay at your place? Like I'll crash on the couch if need be. At this point, I'm like fucking hammered, right? I need to crash somewhere soon. I'm like pretty wasted at this point. So they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I go back with them, and they set me up with like, they're so sweet, right? They just met me, but they set me up with like, they put a sheet on the couch, the one couch that was like not super stained with beer and like cigarette burns and other sketchy stains and stuff like that. There's one couch that was pretty presentable, and it was the only one that you could actually sleep on that was comfortable enough. So they put me on that couch, put a sheet on, gave me a blanket, gave me a pillow. I got on there, bam, I'm asleep. I must have been asleep like, within 30 seconds of like touching the pillow. But I didn't stay asleep long, because Sheila came home with the Greek god, I guess not very long after that, and they went into her room and had really loud sex all night. And it just so happened that the couch I was on was up against the wall that was to her bedroom. So I was like listening to like them, having really what sounded like very, very good sex all night. It was a long night. So that was my worst. That was definitely my worst date ever. Now, just as a kind of a coda to that, I actually ran into Sheila. I ran into Sheila years later. It must have been, it's like probably like 5 years later. I was at the Concordia University pub, Reggie's, which some of you probably know or have heard of. I was at Reggie's, and I was in there with some friends sitting at a booth, and I look over, and who is it? But there it is. It's Sheila, right? And so I started laughing, and I told my friends at the booth, you remember that story I told you about like the worst date I've ever got in my life down in Sherbrooke? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, she's sitting over there with a bunch of friends, right? Well, and so they start laughing. At a certain point, she looks over, and her eyes meet. She recognizes me, and her eyes just drop, and she's just like, oh fuck, like she really was not happy to be seeing me. So I guess she drank did a bunch of shots to get like some courage, and then she came over and she said, John, do you remember me? And I'm like, yep. She said, can we talk for a minute? Right. So we went over to a booth, and she told me, she apologized, and she said that well, basically what happened is, she goes, I'd been in love with this guy for a really long time, and he had a thing for me too, but he was in a relationship, and I was just sort of, constantly pining for him, but he was not the type to cheat on his girlfriend, and I wasn't the type to like move in on somebody who's in a relationship. So I'd been in love with this guy for a really long time, and but he had been in this relationship for a couple of years, and so I'd kind of given up. And so when I met you in Montreal, that was totally for real. I did have a really great time with you, and I had a good connection with you, but nothing like the feelings I had for this other guy, right? So anyway, so we had met up, hung out in Mount Royal and all that stuff, and anyways, sometime between the time that we met and the time that I took the bus down to Sherbrooke, he and his girlfriend broke up. And so he called her up one day and said, I'm single now. I'm no longer in a relationship. And so they immediately started something. Well, she said, well, in that case, you should know that I've been in love with you for a really long time. So they, that night when I went there was the first time that they actually hooked up after, having this thing for each other for years and years. And anyway, and she said that, right, they ended up being together for a number of years. And I mean, ultimately it didn't last. But anyway, so yeah, there's your answer, guys. That is my absolute worst date ever. All right, see ya.